Hi, it's Merle Goldstein. Today I'm going to talk about shame and projective identification in relationships. When we feel shame, which is a feeling of not being okay, feeling like there's something damaged about us, wrong with us, defective in some way, we might feel like a failure, feel very small and vulnerable, like people don't love us or we're unlovable. Basically, shame is like a very fundamental, visceral feeling of not being okay in the eyes of others. And it creates a huge amount of adrenaline in our systems and stress chemicals, and also just a feeling or an impulse to hide. And like we want to sort of like crawl through the floor or disappear, or that no one could ever love us. It's a very, very difficult emotion to tolerate. And because shame is so difficult to tolerate, it's very, very easy to learn behaviors or have conditioned responses that help us avoid feelings of shame. So if we feel shame and then there's something that helps us not have that feeling anymore, those behaviors or avoidance tactics are going to be very, very deeply conditioned inside of us, especially if they start when we're very young. So an example would be if um, showing our true selves to others makes us feel that we'll be judged, or makes us feel ashamed or self-conscious or embarrassed, or that we're going to be rejected in some way, or find out that we're faulty, right? We're not quite right. We're toxic somehow inside, then we might hide or try not to show ourselves to others. We may put on a show for other people or try to put on an image or accommodate to external expectations, right? In a way, we're performing for other people and showing them only what we think they want to see, while protecting our inside selves inside of us so that no one can see it and judge it. So avoiding performing, putting on a show, putting on a mask, hiding our true feelings, suppressing our feelings, all of these are things that make us temporarily feel less shame, and that's why we do more and more of it. The problem is that if you do this a lot, then you lose the ability to have experiences that help you heal your shame, right? So when we're able to show our true selves to others and be vulnerable in relationships that are safe, then we get responses that are affirming, right? We find out that we're human just like everyone else, that we're lovable despite our flaws, that people can tolerate us, that we're not too needy, we're not too aggressive, we're not too shameful, too out there, too bad in some way. And without those reparative experiences of finding ourselves to be good in the eyes of others, even when we show parts of ourselves that we don't feel good about, or that others have disapproved of, without those experiences, we don't heal our shame. And then we have to do more and more and more avoidance, hiding, performing, accommodating, all the things that people do to try to avoid the feelings of shame become almost addictive. It's like you have to kind of keep doing them to keep avoiding the feeling of shame, and you don't have reparative experiences that actually heal the shame in relationships where we're safe, where we can actually be ourselves. So some people deal with their shame by hiding, like I mentioned, or avoiding or not showing parts of themselves to others. But some people, their shame is so pervasive and it's so deep and it's so big and annihilating to them that what they do actually is they don't even let themselves know who they really are. They split off parts of themselves in their minds in a way they basically deny or avoid knowing parts of themselves. They dissociate parts of themselves that they feel are unacceptable. So an example would be if somebody feels that anger is unacceptable, then they might not even let themselves know that they're angry. However, anger is a human emotion. We all feel angry sometimes, right? If someone feels fear and they think fear means weakness, or it's bad to be fearful, or fear is going to somehow evoke judgment in other people. This especially is true for men, who they're often very embarrassed to show that they feel afraid. They want to prove that they feel strong and don't have fear, but it could happen for women also, right? So we might not allow ourselves to know when we actually are scared, especially if we were scared when we were younger. And the only way we know how to deal with the actual fears that come up, because all humans have fear at times when they're threatened, is to split it off, to not know about it, to lie to ourselves in a way, or turn a blind eye to our own experiences that don't fit in with the way we find it acceptable to see ourselves. And when this happens, it can be very difficult in relationships because, first of all, when we're not being honest with ourselves, or we're not allowing ourselves to know certain aspects of ourselves. And if other people see that in us, sometimes we may almost like force them to deny what they see or what they experience. So, for example, if I feel angry and I don't think I'm allowed to feel angry, and I like to see myself as a very nice person all the time, then I may end up being passive aggressive sometimes, right? Where my anger comes out in indirect ways, so I don't have to admit to myself that I'm angry. However, the person on the receiving end of that aggression or passive aggression is not going to feel good. And they're going to want to acknowledge that I'm doing something that shows I'm angry, but I won't allow them to do it probably if I'm having trouble experiencing anger without a huge amount of shame. So in a way, we end up forcing people to deny their own experiences, right? Our children, our partners, people in relationships with us. When they see something in us that we don't want to know about ourselves, we shut them down. And that causes them to gaslight themselves, to second guess themselves, to not know who they actually are, or what that their perceptions are real. So we're actually causing them to have to, in a way, sacrifice their sanity or their knowing or their ability to be honest with themselves for the relationship or the connection with us. Sometimes we will also evoke certain reactions unconsciously without realizing we're doing it in other people as a way of reassuring ourselves that the problem feeling is not really in us, right? So we might provoke other people to be angry without realizing we're doing it. And then we feel like, oh, they're such an angry person, I better just stay away from them, right? Or they're the one with the problem, and we feel like we're okay. People could do this with any experience that makes them feel shame. It could be neediness. Some people have really, really hard time feeling needy, and they may get into relationships where they're taking care of other people and they're getting other people to be dependent on them or to be in the needy position, or because they're giving or taking care of people all the time, they never have to look at their own neediness. It could be anger, like I mentioned. It could be fear. It could be shame. Could also be sometimes we feel shame, but we're afraid to tell ourselves that we feel shame. So we end up trying to get others to feel shame unconsciously, right? We don't realize we're doing this. We're not trying to do it. When other people do this to us, when they sort of push our buttons or evoke certain reactions in us or blame us or focus on our reactions instead of what they're doing to create those reactions, they're not doing it on purpose. They're not trying to hurt us in some way. What they're doing is trying to protect themselves. And the way they protect themselves is by getting the focus to be deflected onto someone else and being able to avoid having to see the part of themselves that they can't handle. And sometimes we just dissociate, right? We kind of just go through the motions and we cut ourselves off from our own emotions, which is very alienating as well. So again, these processes, they come in levels, right? It's difficult and problematic to suppress our emotions or to avoid showing our feelings to other people. But if we're being honest with ourselves that we have those feelings and we're not projecting them into other people or trying to get other people to feel those feelings in relationships with us instead of us having to feel it, if we're not what we call evacuating our emotions into someone else, right? Let's say I feel powerless. I now I'm going to bully someone and they'll feel powerless, to reverse the roles, right? If we're not doing that type of thing in relationships, it's a higher level of personality functioning. We're able to cope with our shame without putting it onto other people or hurting other people in the process, although we're still hurting ourselves and it's not the most healthy, but it's a level of defensiveness that's a little healthier than if we sort of like make other people deny their own reality or their experience of us. If we see bad parts of ourselves in other people, right? We're attracted to people, we're able to say, oh, I can't stand people who are so needy. I can't stand people who are so nervous. I can't handle people who are so angry. But really, we're just like that. We just can't see it in ourselves, right? Things that involve more denial in relationships and trying to deny what other people are experiencing of us in relationships is much more damaging than if we're honest with ourselves and truthful. We're just not healed. So most of the people that end up projecting their experiences out onto other people to avoid feeling bad about themselves, they don't usually come for help because it's comfortable for them. It's a little addictive, and maybe deep down they feel insecure, but it's comfortable for them to be able to do that. And sometimes these people have personality disorders, but basically, they're using defense mechanisms that hurt other people and don't hurt themselves so much. Yeah, in the long run, deep down, it does hurt them. But really, in the short run, they keep doing it because they don't feel the pain of it. It's something that affects the people around them. But there are also people that are struggling with their own feelings, and they want to be able to look at parts of themselves that maybe they feel ashamed of, and they need other people who are safe to help them do that, right? A therapy relationship, a partner who's safe, mentors, authority figures, people that they can actually be themselves with, even friends who are honest with them and vulnerable with them could help them feel less shame. Some people need healing experiences, and they are the ones that come for help because they're honest with themselves. They recognize that there are parts of themselves that, you know, maybe they need to explore a little bit more. Maybe they need help with. And they realize that they're hiding and they don't want to live in hiding. They just don't want to get hurt. They're protecting themselves. And so once you work through that protectiveness and you help them feel safe, then they're able to explore parts of themselves that maybe were scary to look at before. A very common example of this is when we have parts of ourselves that remind us of people we grew up with that we found difficult, right? So if someone had a very critical parent, they may not want to admit to themselves that they're being very critical towards their children because it makes them feel like they're doing to someone else what was done to them. But we all have moments where we are critical of other people or where we turn into people that we lived with, whoever they were, right? So probably someone like that is going to have moments where they're acting critical, maybe not realizing that they're doing it, and being able to explore that part of themselves without feeling like that means they are their parent or their child is going through exactly what they went through or they're all bad, right? It's very difficult for people to look at these parts of themselves that remind them of situations they've been through that were very painful, right? We don't want to hurt other people when we've been hurt. We don't want to experience the feelings that we experienced when we were very young, and we don't want to feel like we're doing that to other people. But we may be doing it in certain contexts in a very small way and need help to learn how to metabolize that, how to process it without feeling too much shame that it overwhelms us. And that's something that therapy can help with, healing relationships can help with. That is something that can be healed so that we don't sort of like create a culture of denial in our family systems around certain specific issues that are hard to look at and hard to talk about. I find that it's very hard in therapy for people to look at parts of themselves that they don't like because it reminds them of things that were done to them, right? If someone grew up feeling like they were a very poor student and feeling very bad about themselves. They don't want their child to feel that same feeling, right? And maybe they're doing something very subtle that is creating that feeling in their child and they don't realize they're doing it because they can't bear to look at it or face it, right? So they have to kind of split it off. So it's not like as unhealthy as someone who chronically denies or has a blind spot for how they're affecting other people, but it might come up in small little parts of their lives, and they may need help from someone else to be able to process that and change some of their thinking around it so it doesn't evoke a lot of shame or make them feel like it's really disastrous somehow to face that part of themselves. We all have parts of ourselves that are hard to show to others and hard to show to ourselves. It's important that we find ways to heal those parts of ourselves that we didn't feel were affirmed or were safe or that we've tried to split off. And it's also important for us to be aware when other people are trying to project their shame onto us or their feelings onto us and to get us to carry in a way the bad feelings for them. If you grew up in a home where this was done a lot, then you probably are the type of person that absorbs other people's feelings a lot. And if other people see you a certain way, it may be very hard for you to separate out who you actually are from that mirror that you're being shown. And so you may second guess yourself, right? You may be prone to letting yourself be gaslit by other people or have other people deny your experience, even though it's valid. And then you might need help to be able to realize what was done to you, right? That someone, they weren't trying to be hurtful. They weren't doing it on purpose. They weren't aware they were doing it, but there was someone in your life that required you to not see things honestly and accurately that they were doing to you or that you were experiencing as a way of protecting themselves from feeling bad. And separating from that could involve a grief process. It's not always easy, but separating from that helps us to be able to say, you know what? Just because my mother or my father or my brother or my teacher saw me a certain way or told me that they weren't hurting me or they weren't, being passive aggressive or they weren't trying to make me feel guilty doesn't mean that they were right and that my experience wasn't valid. and learning to kind of trust our inner core and be able to show what we're experiencing to other people that don't deny us our reality, right? That say, I believe you. Or if you give me feedback about how I'm coming across or what I'm doing to you, right? I hear you. I'm not going to deny what you're saying to me. I'm going to look for a place in myself where maybe it's valid. We may not always agree, but I'm going to try to see, right? See the situation accurately and see things from your perspective. Those are very healing experiences for people that have had their feelings and their experiences and their perceptions, invalidated, dismissed, rejected, and sometimes they were even punished or hurt for having for seeing the truth, right? For seeing things the way that they were, or for saying the truth. Sometimes people say the truth and they're blamed. That didn't happen, right? And that really messes with our ability to trust ourselves in our own minds, which makes it very hard to be in relationships in a way where we have the security to explore the other person's mind and to show what's really going on inside of us. But there is healing if you're willing to be vulnerable and to also figure out which places are safe, which people make you feel affirmed and heard and validated, and which places are unsafe, and to learn to just detach, right? You don't have to see everything through the eyes of the other just because they see things a certain way and they were important in your life. So anyways, these are just some thoughts about shame that I was thinking about today, working with some of my clients. If you have any questions or comments, feel free. I'll be happy to answer them.